Have you ever wondered what happens when you die? Not the version you see in the movies. There's no music swelling in the background. No pearly gates waiting for you. Just a moment of haunting stillness. My name is Lena, and I died on a quiet October afternoon in 2018. But the strangest part wasn't death itself. It was what I saw afterward, a garden unlike anything on earth. And a question that echoed in my mind. Do you remember why you chose this life? I remember that moment as clearly as if it happened yesterday. There was no warning, no symptoms. I was folding laundry in my bedroom when the world suddenly spun. My knees gave out, and I collapsed onto the pillow at my feet. Silence fell. A heavy darkness wrapped itself around everything. And then, I saw myself, from above. A woman was lying on the floor, as if time had abandoned her. There was no pain, no panic, just a strange sensation, as if I were remembering something I once knew, but had long forgotten. I wasn't afraid of dying. What I feared was living an entire life without ever truly waking up. From the outside, my life looked perfectly fine. I had a steady office job, a kind, caring husband, 2 well-behaved kids, a clean, comfortable home with everything we needed. Every morning, I woke up at 5 a.m., got the kids ready for school, swung by the grocery store, came home, cooked, worked, cleaned, helped with homework, read bedtime stories, went to sleep. And the next day, I did it all over again. Every day the same rhythm, the same routine. People would say things like, "You're amazing, so strong, you're blessed." But I wasn't so sure. Sometimes, I'd catch myself standing in front of the mirror a little longer than usual. Not to fix my makeup, but to try and figure out who that woman was staring back at me. Some days, I'd find myself wondering, if I disappeared tomorrow, would anything change? I wasn't depressed. I wasn't miserable. I wasn't crying out for help. But I wasn't happy either. I didn't feel alive. It was as if I were operating a machine, and that machine was me, but the engine had shut off a long time ago. Every evening, I came home, turned on the kitchen light, and made dinner just like always. I smiled. I made conversation. I hugged my children. I did it all, but inside there was a growing emptiness. Like an invisible hole, slowly draining the life out of me, one drop at a time. One saw it. No one knew. And even I began to forget who I used to be. Until that October afternoon, when everything stopped. It was a Saturday afternoon. I had just finished washing a sink full of dirty dishes and was drying my hands with a kitchen towel when I felt a slight pinch at the back of my neck. I didn't think much of it. Probably just a stiff muscle, I told myself. But 3 seconds later, the left side of my face went numb. My hand dropped. The towel slipped from my fingers. I tried to walk toward the phone, but my left leg wouldn't move. My whole body collapsed to the floor slowly, like a tree being cut down at the base. I was still conscious. I could hear the wind rustling outside the window. The TV is playing in the living room. But I couldn't call out. I couldn't move. I couldn't do anything. And then everything faded into silence. There were no screams. No flashing red lights. Just me rising. Not in a dramatic, Hollywood-style out-of-body moment, but in a way that felt chillingly real. I saw myself lying motionless on the kitchen floor. I saw my husband rush in panicked. I saw the neighbors calling for help. I saw the stretcher being wheeled into the house. But I was no longer there. I was floating above it all, light as the wind, still as water. And then, something strange happened. I wasn't afraid. I wasn't panicking. Quite the opposite. I felt an overwhelming sense of peace. As if, finally, I had returned to the place where I truly belonged. At the time, I didn't realize this was only the beginning. What waited for me beyond that light wasn't death. It was the truth about my soul. I didn't know where I was, but everything around me was light. Not blinding, not harsh, but a kind of light that felt alive. There were no ceilings, no walls, no clear shapes or forms. And yet, everything knew me. That light didn't just touch my skin. It shone straight into my heart and into my soul. And then I saw my grandfather, the one who had passed nearly 20 years ago. He looked at me with the same familiar eyes, but he was younger, radiant, as if age had never touched him. Then I saw Bella, the little dog I had in college. She came running toward me, tail wagging wildly, and I broke down in tears. I wasn't crying from emotion. I was crying because for the first time in my life I truly felt it. Everything that has ever loved us, he is still waiting for us on the other side. And then someone appeared. I didn't know who they were, but somehow I knew. This was my soul guide. We didn't need words. We simply understood each other. He didn't speak. Every feeling, every question, every answer was transmitted directly into my heart, like a pure current of energy. And then, I was shown something not with my eyes, but with my entire consciousness. It was my life. The moments when I smiled but felt empty inside. The times I chose silence, instead of speaking my truth. The times I turned my back on myself just to please someone else. There was no judgment, no blame, but I felt every consequence, every misunderstanding, every person I had hurt, and more than anything, every moment I had wasted in this precious life. My guide didn't scold me. He simply asked, in a voice as soft as the wind, "Lena, do you remember why you chose this life?" That question, it shook me to my core. Somewhere deep within, my soul already knew the answer long before I was ever born. But I had forgotten. I didn't choose this life to be the perfect mother, the devoted wife, or the model employee. I chose it to learn how to love myself, to learn how to say no with courage. To learn how to forgive, and to remember the light that had always been mine. And then he showed me two paths. One way to stay in this place with no pain, no sorrow, only pure, unconditional love. The other was to return, to continue the unfinished journey of my soul. I hesitated. I truly did. And then I heard my child crying. In that moment, I knew I had to go back. I left the light, but the light never left me. And now I don't live the way I used to. Because now I remember, I chose this life not just to survive, but to wake up. People often ask, "Are you still alive?" But rarely does anyone stop to ask, "Are you truly living?" I woke up in the hospital. The bright light from the ceiling made me flinch and close my eyes. Someone was calling my name, but their voice sounded distant, as if coming from another world. I couldn't answer. My mouth wouldn't move. The left side of my body was numb. It felt like a part of me had been left behind, in that strange dream, that place where I had touched the light and heard the question, "Do you remember why you chose this life?" Now, I was facing a painful reality. Everything felt slow, broken. I couldn't speak. I couldn't walk. I couldn't do any of the things I used to take for granted. Just days earlier, I had been a busy mom, an independent woman, in control of her life. Now, I needed help just to wipe my face, to eat, and to be carried to the bathroom. I used to think I was strong, but no one ever taught me how to be strong when you've lost everything, when your arms can no longer hold your children, when your voice can no longer say, "Mommy loves you," when your legs can no longer carry you home. Strength doesn't come easily. It hides, it hurts, and it humbles you. I began the long journey of physical therapy. Each session was a battle not just with my body, but with the weight of despair. Just moving a single finger took hours of practice and more tears than I could count. But I didn't cry because of the pain. I cried because I felt useless, like a hollow shell of the person I used to be. But it was in that darkest moment that something began to shine. At the very edge of my despair, I remembered the dream. I remembered the guide who had said, "You chose this life, not to endure it, but to learn how to love." I began to see things differently. I stopped viewing my body as the enemy and started seeing it as a weary friend in need of patience and care. I stopped comparing myself to who I used to be. Instead, I focused on the smallest steps, moving one finger, speaking a single syllable, lifting my foot off the ground. I started writing in a journal every day. My right hand trembled, but still I wrote. Each line was an act of returning to myself. I wrote about the things I had forgotten, the simple joy of being alive, of being heard, of touching the ones I love. One day, I saw my daughter standing in the doorway. She smiled and said, "Mom, you lifted your arm." I broke down in tears, not because of the movement, but because of the look in her eyes. In that moment, I wasn't just a patient. I was her mom. I was someone fighting. I was hopeful. I quit my job. I turned down every invitation to return to my old pace of life. I chose to slow down, to eat every meal with my children, to hold my mother's hand on quiet walks, to learn how to breathe deeply each morning. I stopped chasing expectations, and instead, I started listening to my heart, something I had neglected for so many years. When I was strong enough to share my story, I began telling it. Online, at gatherings, and to others lying still in hospital beds, just like I once did. I told them so they would know, you are not just a broken body. You are a soul learning how to return. I'm no longer the woman I was before the stroke. I'm a deeper version of her, softer, truer. I no longer live to please others. I live to stay true to myself. There are still nights when I dream of that light, but this time I don't ask, why me? Instead, I whisper, thank you for waking me up. I know there will be more challenges ahead. There will be days when my body resists again. But this time I won't abandon myself. I choose to stay, not out of duty, but because I have tasted death and I know now. Only when you truly live, do you earn the right to keep on living? If you're hearing my voice right now, there's one thing I want you to know. You don't need a near-death experience to wake up. All it takes is a decision that starting today, you will choose to live authentically. Light doesn't always arrive in miracles. Sometimes it flickers to life the moment you dare to face the weakest part of yourself. I know you're living with 1,000 worries, work, responsibilities, expectations, and wounds that still haven't healed. But please, just for a moment, sit still and ask yourself, who am I living for? What am I chasing? And is it truly worth it? I used to live like a shadow, always busy, always trying to become someone in the eyes of others. Until I nearly lost everything and realized there's nothing more precious than living true to yourself. You don't have to wait until your body breaks down. You don't have to hit rock bottom. You can choose again right now. It starts by simply stopping, by listening, and by forgiving. Forgive yourself for forgetting who you are, for holding on for too long, for living someone else's life. Write down what you long for, but keep putting off. Make the phone call you've been hesitating to make. Say the words of love you've been too afraid to speak. Don't wait for the perfect moment. Life is not a rough draft. Every passing second, it's a chance you'll never get back. If I could come back from death, then you, still alive, can come back to yourself. Don't live one more day in the silence of your soul. Don't let old wounds decide your future. Choose to love yourself. Choose to live awake. And if you're ready, close your eyes, take a deep breath, and gently whisper to yourself, I've come home. If you've made it this far, maybe your soul is gently knocking, asking you, is it time to finally live true? I don't have the answer for you. All I have is a story, a crack in the surface, a death that taught me how to live again. And if my story made you pause, even just for a moment, to listen to the rhythm of your heartbeat, then maybe the light has already found its way in. I'm not asking you to change the world. I'm only asking you to begin again with yourself. Because sometimes a miracle isn't a burst of thunder. It's a deep, holy silence where you quietly whisper, I'm still here. I was never truly gone. And if you truly find your way back, then live as if every second is a choice. You don't have to be perfect. You just have to be awake and brave enough to live once truly.